Howdy y'all, and welcome back to another episode of SmoothBrainEDH, where we make the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. This week, Queen Marchesa and Kibo have overthrown the channel. Let's see which royal's crimes are able to dethrone the rest and become the monarch. Also bananas! Up first is Shelby on Marchesa, the Black Rose. Shelby's trying to get 1/1 counters on his creatures so that he can sacrifice them and bring them back at his instep to generate value from Enter the Battlefield and Death triggers. Next up is Seth on his Kibo, Uktabi Prince list. Seth is just here to go bananas. By giving out bananas, he hopes to make his apes and monkeys strong and rumble over his opponents. Our third player today is Matt, playing Marchesa, Dealer of Death. Matt's gonna do a crime. Actually several of them, in order to generate card advantage from his commander and maybe reanimate a big creature along the way. Last up is me, Cameron, playing my Queen Marchesa list. This deck's secret commander is the Equipment Sunforger, and I'm aiming to find it early and pull some really cool instants out of my deck using Sunforger's activated ability. We're about to get to the game, but before that, go ahead and give us a like and let us know down in the comments which deck you're rooting for. Links to our socials and our deck list and our public Discord are in the description down below. Our channel is partnered with Dragon Shield, so if you want to pick up any new sleeves or Magic related products, use our affiliate link down below. Thanks to Dragon Shield for giving us the code SMOOTH5, so use that for 5% off your entire order at checkout. Now, let's see who gets to reign.
Welcome. Looks like Seth wins the die roll. He's got that legendary Forest Go. Matt will play a Misty Rainforest, and he fetches with it to find Undercity Sewers, and the Surveil will stay on top. He goes ahead and passes while searching, and Cameron will play a Vault of Champions into Esper Sentinel and pass to Shelby, who plays a Badlands and passes to Seth, who plays a Mountain, then he'll cast 3 visits, not pay the 1, and find Commercial District. Rockfell Vale goes to the graveyard, and then we'll go to Matt's turn. He'll play a Command Tower and cast Rakdos Signet, and not pay the 1. He'll then pass to Cameron, who plays a Swamp, and then he'll cast his Talisman of Indulgence. He'll then move to combat and swing for 1 at the person with the least permanents on board. What a jerk. But actually, now that I think about it, Shelby wants to be off the throne, so he'll probably take it. We'll then move to his turn, where he'll play an Underground River, then tap for 2 and cast Kalane. And he taps his river for a black, but forgets to take the damage. He gets a treasure though, and then the turn is passed to Seth, and he'll play a tap Stomping Ground and cast Kibo, then pass to Matt, who will just play a Reliquary Tower, then cast Marchesa, Dealer of Death, and then he'll pass the turn to Cameron. He's going to start his turn off with a Sundown Pass, then he'll tap for 2 and cast Talisman of Conviction. He'll then tap for an additional 2 and cast Fighter Class. When it ETBs, he finds Sunforger to his hand. He'll then pass to Shelby. He'll play High Market, then tap for 4 and cast Marchesa. He used a treasure to do this, so she'll get a 1/1 counter, and so does Kibo. And he forgets another damage from his Pain Land. Shelby will then send Mr. Painterman over at Seth, and there's a Dethrone trigger. Seth decides not to block and kill it, because it'll just come back and accelerate Shelby even more. The turn is then passed to Seth, and he'll play a Reliquary Tower. Then he'll cast a Scrounging Bandar, which comes in with 2 1/1 counters. He'll then activate Kibo, and with that Banana's assistance, he'll cast Towering Gibbon, and he also gains 2 life. Then he'll pass to Matt, who plays an Eroded Canyon. It deals 1 damage to Seth, and what do you know, that's a crime. He'll pay 1 to Marchesa's ability. A card goes to his hand, and then Polluted Delta goes to the graveyard. After this, he moves to combat and swings for 3 commander over at Cameron, who takes it. Post-combat, he passes the turn, and Cameron starts off with the Plains. He'll then tap for 5 and cast the Lord of Pain. Alright, if that stays around, this is going to be a short game. Anyways, the turn is then passed to Shelby. He'll play a Swamp, then tap for 4 and cast Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. Lord of Pain will trigger for 4 damage, and Cameron points it at Matt. Shelby will then move to combat, and before attackers are declared, Matt will tap his Undercity Sewers to filter Rakdos with a Signet, then he'll tap for an additional red to cast Wild Magic Sorcery. He targets Yawgmoth, and he did commit a crime. He's got a black floating from the Rakdos Signet, so he'll pay the 1. And since this is Matt's first spell this turn, Lord of Pain deals 2 damage to Seth. 1 is also not paid to Esper Sentinel, and the card that goes to the graveyard from the Dealer of Death trigger is a Talisman. Shelby decides to respond to this by sacrificing Kalane to Yawgmoth to draw a card, lose a life, and put a -1/-1 counter on Esper Sentinel to kill it. And since it is an artifact going to the graveyard, Kibo will trigger. Okay, after all that, the Yawgmoth will finally die. Then the creature Shelby flips into is Scornblade Berserker. When it ETBs, it has backup, and he'll put the counter on itself. After this, he'll move to combat and swing for 4 commander at Matt for his transgressions. Post-combat, Shelby will sacrifice his banana, which triggers Kibo, and he'll use the mana to sacrifice his Berserker to draw a card. And the Lord of Pain negates out the life gain. After this, Shelby will move to end step, and his Berserker and Kalane will both return to the battlefield, and Kalane will be backed up for 1. And he also gets another treasure. Alright, let's move to Seth's turn now, where his Bandar will move 3 1/1 counters over to Kibo, and then he'll play a Maze of Ith's Lane for turn. He'll then move to combat and swing Kibo at Cameron, attack trigger, and he sacrifices his banana, which triggers Kibo. Cameron will not block and take the 9 commander damage, and then before the combat step is over, Maze of Ith will be activated to untap Kibo. Then he'll activate Kibo in his second main to give everyone a banana. Then, with the help of that banana, he's able to cast a Rishkar's Expertise. Lord of Pain bolts Shelby for 6, and then Cameron will respond to this with a Path to Exile targeting Kibo. So bye-bye Kibo, and Seth gets a tapped mountain to the battlefield. Unfortunately for Cameron, he doesn't realize Seth is still drawing 7 here. And so that's what he does, and then for free he'll cast a Viridian Revel. Cameron also realizes that his Lord of Pain says when a player, not an opponent, so he'll deal 1 to Seth from his Path to Exile. Then the turn is passed to Matt, and he decides to minimize Lord of Pain damage by casting Portent targeting himself. Damage target is Seth. Top 3 look awful, so he shuffles his library, and then he'll draw a card on Cameron's upkeep. Matt will then cast Rite of Replication, targeting Lord of Pain, and it is a crime, so he pays 1. Marchesa's ability will put 1 to Matt's hand and Swansong into the graveyard, and then there are now 2 Lord of Pains. Let's move to Cameron's turn now, where he'll immediately tap for 4 and cast Blood Reckoning. 2 Lord of Pain triggers go on the stack. Cameron will point his at Seth, and Matt actually decides to point his at himself to make sure he stays off the throne this next turn cycle. Cameron will then play his own Maze of Ith's Lane for turn, and then he passes the turn. Alright, we're now on Shelby's turn, where he will cast Demonic Tutor. So he gets himself a card to hand, and Lord of Pains will gang up on Seth. Then he'll tap for 2 black, he gets 1 from a land and 1 from a treasure, so Seth will draw a card, and he'll cast Meat Hook Massacre for a 0. Then he'll sack his Nanner for a red, drawing Seth another card, and then he'll tap High Market to cast Goblin Bombardment. Shelby will then move to combat, and he swings his Artist over at Matt, who does not block, he knows how God Bomb triggers work, and then Shelby will pass the turn. Seth starts his turn off by tapping for 6 and casting Season of Gathering. His chosen modes are to destroy all artifacts and to draw cards. Lord of Pains will trigger, and Cameron and Matt both agree to have a Gentleman 6 pointed at each other. Matt's doing that is technically a crime, and since his bananas are going away anyway, he'll sacrifice 1 to pay 1 to Marchesa. He'll put a card to his hand, Ancient Tomb to the graveyard, and Seth also draws a card. Then the season resolves. He'll draw 7 cards off of its draw ability, and then all artifacts are destroyed, and Viridian Revels will draw him an additional 4 cards. And it's a good thing he's got that Reliquary Tower. Anyways, he'll then play Grove of the Burn Willows and pass to Matt. And Matt decides, I'm the only one who gets a Lord of Pain. I'll 2 mana cast Baleful Mastery, and exile yours. Cameron at least gets a card out of this though. And even though Matt did pay 2 mana into it, its mana value is still 4. So Lord of Pains will trigger for 4. Cameron's goes at Seth, and Matt's will hit Shelby, and it is a crime, so he'll pay. And an Izzet Signet goes to the graveyard from this. Matt will then play a basic Mountainous Land for turn, and then he'll just pass the turn to Cameron, who starts off by shocking in a Godless Shrine. Then he'll cast Steel Shaper's Gift. Lord of Pain hits Shelby for 1, and this will tutor him Skullclamp to hand. And then the turn is passed to Shelby. He'll start off with Urborg Scavengers. On ETB, it'll exile Matt's Rite of Replication and get a 1/1 counter. And the Lord of Pain trigger bolts Seth for 3. Shelby then moves to combat and he full swings everything at Matt. And yes, Urborg Scavengers does have Summoning Sickness, but Shelby sacrifices it before damage, so it doesn't end up mattering. Matt blocks Shelby's Marchesa with Lord of Pain, and then Mr. Painterman with his Marchesa. Also before damage, Shelby will sacrifice his Urborg Scavengers with Goblin Bombardment to deal the last damage necessary to Matt's Marchesa, and he kills her. And then there's 3 Meat Hook Massacre triggers. Shelby then moves to his end step, and all 3 creatures will return to the battlefield. ETB triggers will get him another treasure, and then Urborg Scavengers eats Matt's Swansong and gets a counter. Alright, let's move to Seth's turn now, where he'll play a mountain and then cast Kogla, the Titan Ape. Lord of Pain domes Cameron for 6. Kogla then resolves, and the ECB fight trigger targets Lord of Pain. Matt responds with a Sink into Stupor though to bounce Kogla. There's a Lord of Pain trigger which hits Seth for 3. Cameron then decides to also respond to this with Aloran's Searing Light. Lord of Pain trigger will target Seth. Shelby then responds to Aloran's Searing Light by sacrificing his Scavengers to Goblin Bombardment. He deals 1 damage to Matt, and there's also a Meat Hook Massacre trigger. The Searing Light will then resolve. It hits Shelby's Marchesa, which goes to the command zone, Seth's Gibbon, and Matt's Lord of Pain. And Cameron does have Spell Mastery, so they each lose life equal to the power. And unfortunately for Seth, his Gibbon has 10 power, so he just dies. That was quite the interaction. Alright, Seth's dead, so all his permanents are gone. So Matt's Sink into Stupor is fizzled. And then we just move through Seth's turn and go to Matt's turn now. Shelby's Urborg Scavengers will return, and it exiles Matt's Wild Magic Sorcery and gets a 1/1 counter. Alright, now on Matt's turn, he decides it's time to be a little funny, goofy haha, and he casts Lord of Pain. Yeah, this guy's not going anywhere till this game is over. Anyways, the turn is then passed to Cameron. He'll start by finally casting his commander, Queen Marchesa, and he becomes the Monarch. 4 Lord of Pains are pointed at Shelby. Then 3 commander damage is pointed over at Matt. The turn is then passed to Shelby. All he has to do is deal 3 Goblin Bombardment damage to Matt, and then there'll be 3 Meat Hook Massacre triggers. But this doesn't kill Cameron, so he plays it pretty smart. He'll tap for 4 and cast Blasphemous Act, which puts a Lord of Pain trigger on the stack. Matt obviously isn't going to point 9 damage at himself, so he points it at Cameron. And once that ability resolves and priority comes back around to him, Shelby will hold priority and sacrifice his 3 creatures to Gob Bomb and point 3 damage at Matt. Then 3 Meat Hook Massacre triggers go on the stack to finish Cameron and Matt off, making Shelby and Marchesa the Black Rose the winners. Congratulations. Okay, I'm just going to skip the normal outro. That game had 3 Lord of Pains. 2 on the board at the same time, and then 1 there at the end. 3 Lord of Pains. Everyone was suffering. While it does sound awful, everyone there at the end of the game did agree it was a great game and they had a lot of fun, so that's good. What did you guys think of it? Let us know down in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to check out all of our wacky links and like and subscribe if you haven't already. Anyways, that's enough out of me. I hope you all have a smooth day.